because
Well,
it definitely needs doing.
I kind of figured, Kelly J, that the cameras were watching the people, and we could always look back on that later. I can refresh that. But the cameras aren't on the pollies. So
Yeah.
I just kept my eyes on that. And I'm a bit of an observer anyway, so that was kind of, a little bit of fun. Like, what's she doing? And she's glaring at me now, and I'm going to give her a glare back. Ooh, we don't like that blonde one too much.
I love it. I love it. Well, I look forward to seeing you in Brisbane and Melbourne. So I will see you soon. Nice to talk to you.
I can't wait.
Cheers.
See you soon, Kelly J. Bye.
Bye. Hello, good evening. You're through to Talk Tuesday. In fact, I think I'm saying good morning to you. My name is Kelly J. You can say who you are. You don't have to. What would you like to say?
Hey, Kelly, I'm through. I can hear myself back, which is weird. You can call me Josh. I'm also based in Brisbane, and I've been watching this whole weird, surreal saga unfold since about 2016 when non-binary was invented, and I marched for same-sex marriage, and I'm a big fan of Christopher Hitchens because he helped sort of unplug a lot of religious baggage that I had, and I was sort of out there, and a lot of these principles about sorry, I'm a bit nervous. Like extraordinary claims requiring extraordinary evidence, and the whole application of reason not being welcome at the discussion around trans makes me super suspicious, because I remember when these ideas were floated, it's like, oh, that's interesting. That's going to collide with women's rights. And like, oh, no. I'm sure they'll negotiate it somehow. So I like the invention of the word trans women.
Yeah.
And I just assumed that somehow this stuff was going to be dealt with in an honest, reasoned way. And I know that thinking is hard, and people don't like having complex discussions when, there's a chance of offending anybody. And I feel like that's what we have governments for. Like, they're supposed to be doing the thinking, and they're supposed to be making the hard decisions, and law isn't meant to be about elevating anyone's feelings above reality and the greater good. So there's so many layers to all of this, but I could branch off on 1,000 tangents, but just nobody wants to have the discussion, and reason has left the building, and that I can't wrap my head around it. Yeah.
What do you think Hitch would make of it? Because his brother is obviously deeply conservative and has still said a couple of dodgy things about this issue, which makes me think he just couldn't care less about women.
Whose brother, sorry?
Hitchens' brother, because I'm a massive fan of Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Christopher Hitchens. I've got no time for his brother. I don't even watch. I don't even know what he said. So yeah.
Well, have you at any point? Well, I just wonder whether Hitchens would be on the more woke side, even on his kind of rational, reasonable.
He would be saying it's preposterous. I imagine him using that word with great weight.
So I really, really hope so. Because he was my hero. So I called myself an anti-theist for like a decade.
Same.
Okay.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, there's a couple of other just small points, like like if there were an application of reason and consistency, and if you could remove the double think and the double standards from this argument, we've got things like the scorn that gets poured on people for cultural appropriation in certain circumstances. And obviously you can apply that to woman face, but there's a lot of theft that goes on by the trans activists that seems to completely escape scrutiny. So this idea of anybody being assigned a gender at birth, there is a very, very rare case of people with disorders of sexual development where you can't quite tell, obviously, if it's male or female. And those people, maybe on the rarest of rare occasions, have to have a doctor make a decision. And under those very rare circumstances, maybe the phrase assigned at birth has some merit. But for these trans activists to take that little ultra rare example and then apply it to the entire human race and pretend that we've all been magically assigned this arbitrary label that has no biological or reality-based source, it just drives me nuts.
Yeah, well, we know, I mean, look, as far as I'm concerned, it's like a dogmatic quasi religion. And so
absolutely
applying our Hitchens knowledge here, it doesn't stand up to scrutiny, which is why they have no debate, and no debate has been the defense of religion for time immemorial. So that's the whole thing.
I feel like they're stealing that a little bit from the guilt that people felt about the way that gay people were treated, because I lived through a lot of the worst of that, and I know that was not a good time for anybody, hence me marching for marriage equality. But like they've borrowed the goodwill and leveraged the guilt that people might have been feeling. And a lot of people have just skipped thinking altogether and go, oh, trans must be gay 2.0. Sure, whatever. You can come on in, wear a dress, do your thing, go to the ladies' toilet, and that's fine. Like there's no real thought, because the idea of pausing and going, oh, hang on a sec, we've just made this massive societal change with marriage equality. Can we just let things settle for a second before we start erasing women and upending all these societal norms? There's load-bearing elements to some of these societal norms,
Yeah, well, 100%. Yeah, and it's the fact that it's happening to kids, and the fact that people have suspended their thinking. But I think that's been happening for quite some time. We've had a lot of deferred stuff, so I think it comes at crazy stuff like putting kids in timeout instead of saying no and dealing with their behavior immediately. I think that's got something to do with it. I think the fact that kids don't hear the word no very often at all. My children's school, they used to, well, not their current school, but when they were little, you'd be like on a red card, a yellow card, or you'd have a traffic light system, or you'd have a number system. But they wouldn't just say to a child, don't do it, it's wrong. It's naughty, don't do it. So I just think this couldn't have happened at any other time. We've got the internet, we've got globalism, we've got people having less real access to democracy, and yet feeling like they have access to any control in their lives. So it's a scary, scary time. And then we saw the pandemic come, and people just fall into place. Whether it was true or not, it doesn't even matter whether COVID was 100% true or completely made up or somewhere in between or whatever. The fact that you could get a population just to do as they were told is scary.
Yeah, it's a totalitarian's wet dream right now, because you've got so many distractions and so many ways to divide society and make them fight each other and ignore the big issues of massive corruption and systemic, just hijacking from the top down. So it really does make me suspicious where these movements get funded from to a large degree. On the subject of men in women's prisons, I'm very curious why nobody's looked at the example of Thailand, because they've had ladyboys for decades, or I don't know how long it goes back, but they've dealt with the problem and have separate wings in men's prisons for the ladyboys. So why can't the rest of the world look at something like that rather than just destroying women's rights?
Because that would be an evidence-based place to look. So that's probably why.
Yeah.
How do you think how old are you, Josh, if you don't mind me asking?
I lie, but I'm in my 40s.
God, you sound really young.
Maybe that's just my lack of maturity. I don't know what that is, but yeah.
No, you do say you've obviously had an easy life. Okay, what's going to break this cycle in your opinion?
I've always believed that the world changes sort of one conversation at a time, and I've tried to have this conversation with my friends and the circles of people that I meet up with on a weekly basis. I don't force conflict, and I don't seek out difficult subjects, but when we're all living through this stuff and the consequences aren't invisible, like it's weird how we can have abstract empathy on really narrow conditions and pretend that we're virtuous, but this particular issue is coming down the pike quite quickly. And like with the legislation smuggled through over Christmas, I don't know how that's going, by the way, but the self-ID stuff that's trying to be passed through here under the name of compassion and kindness or whatever. Like I've had a few cards that I've sneakily passed to a few friends who I know that I can talk about this, but I think unless we have conversations, unless we push through the sort of social isolation and the sense of, I'm going to go against the crowd by saying this, unless we all do that, we are going to be in a really bad place in not too long at all. And then winding back legislation is 1,000 times harder than passing it in the first place.
Absolutely. Well, already in the chat, Lola Moth is asking if you're going to talk in Brisbane.
I'm thinking about it. I know the weird thing is, like, if there are protesters there, the scary part for me is that I'll be protesting against my friends. Like, they'll be on the other side of this, and that's going to be. But yeah, I can't hold my tongue on this, because the cognitive dissonance is just too great. The doublethink and all the Orwellian themes. I know it's a cliche, but we're just at like peak crazy right now. And yeah, I need some sanity. And if that means getting better friends, then maybe that's what I got to do.
Well, look, talk or don't talk. It'd be lovely to meet you.
Yeah, cheers. I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for your